Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, all the new viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to my channel, I have these live streams alongside videos that are usually shorter. With these live streams, we have more in-depth talk and some community participation as well, and open Q&A sessions too. There have been a lot of things happening in the past 2 days, and today we had more dangerous developments coming from Lebanon. We had another barbaric mass terror attack that Israel conducted again. What did they do today? Apparently, they attacked another network, this time with walkie-talkies that many Lebanese hold. Parts of them would be Hezbollah, but again, similar with the case of the pagers, you're talking about devices that are used by non-combatants, by civilians, by people in hospitals, by people in the public, by people outside. And so far, the reports are saying that 14 people were killed today and a minimum of 450 were wounded. And you're talking about massive numbers. And the level and scale of this mass barbaric terrorism is underplayed. It's underplayed massively in mainstream media. You're not hearing a lot of condemnations, hardly any, as a matter of fact. And some people are showing us that if it's a heroic Israeli action against Hezbollah, although we have civilians being killed, and you're using products that are used in the mass public hands, and no one is worried about that? These devices can be in anyone's hand. They can do that tomorrow with an app on your phone, any phone. And we've had these horrific scenes coming from Lebanon. Again, you're talking about funerals. Like, for example, look at this video here. This was a funeral of some of the people who died yesterday. It's cold-blooded terrorism. It's about innocent people walking in a funeral, exploding them, and we had scenes of explosions coming from homes as well. Scenes coming from many places. What is this? Residential buildings. I mean, we had some pages on social media. We had them sharing explosions coming from civilian homes. I'm going to share one of them with you as well. Bear with me a second. And it's coming again all across Lebanon. It's not just one place. It's coming from multiple places in Lebanon. No, we shared this one. Let me put the other one for you. Look, what is that? Civilian buildings. Civilian buildings, these people are attacking. Civilian population. People with these devices that can be anywhere. And they're killing them in mass numbers. So what we're seeing here is mass-scale terror, mass-scale state-sponsored terror. And many countries are turning a blind eye, not condemning. As a matter of fact, some people are mocking the poor Lebanese people in what they're going through. But this is showing that Israel indeed began a new phase. That's one of the main things that I want to talk to you about, alongside a couple of other things to do with the device, the company, the original location, and reports that the company that its name is being used is potentially going to sue Israel for what they're doing. But we're going to start off with Yoav Gallant. Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister, he had multiple statements coming out today. Okay, so in these statements, he said that the weight, the intensity is going to the north now, and we are looking into a new phase. We're going into a new phase in this war. We entered a new phase, and the majority of the Israeli army, Israeli forces, are going to be located in Lebanon. So I had a video earlier on saying that they were intending to do that, and now indeed they moved all of their Division 98 and the commando units, and now Gallant is confirming that. So he announced the center of gravity is moving north. We are at a new stage in this war. He visited Ramat David base and he received an overview with the base commander. We had a couple of reports in Israeli media, and we also had a report not just from Gallant but from the chief of staff as well. The chief of staff also announced today that there is a change of strategy during his visit today to the Northern Command, and he revealed there are capabilities, there are other capabilities that we have not yet activated, meaning they clearly were the ones who were activated these capabilities in Lebanon without admitting. We have seen some of the things here, and we are preparing plans moving forward. The rule is every time we are at work at a certain stage, the next two stages are ready to be released already. At every stage, the price that Hezbollah will be paying is higher. He also added at the beginning of his remarks, we are very determined to create the security conditions that return the residents to their homes, to the settlements, with a high level of security, and we are ready to do whatever it takes to bring these things about. We have been fighting in Gaza for almost a year. Throughout the entire war, two main goals: there is more, the dismantling of Hamas and the kidnapped must be returned. Many achievements, and we still have a lot to go forward. This is coming after Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government officially added the return of the displaced Israelis from the northern settlements to their homes. So they added that as a new goal for the war. Previously, it was mostly focused on Gaza. Their declared objectives: dismantling Hamas, making sure Gaza doesn't pose a threat, returning the prisoners of war, and having security control. None of them have been achieved, by the way, but now they've added this when it comes to Lebanon. And he added the center of gravity, and that's from Gallant, is moving north. We are diverting forces, resources, energy towards the north. We have not forgotten the kidnapped, and we have not forgotten the tasks in the south. This is our duty, and we are carrying it out at the same time. That this action is being taken by multiple bodies in Israel, clearly indicating that that's it. And by the way, with the scale of what they've done in Lebanon, this is an outright declaration of an all-out war. We had reports, as a matter of fact, confirmations that the Iranian ambassador was one of the victims, alongside two of his associates. Very dangerous stuff happening in Lebanon, and Israel is clarifying. Now, when it comes to the device. When it comes to the device, we have lots of interesting stuff, okay? So there's a company called Gold Apollo. Gold Apollo that went out and they actually released a statement. They said that Budapest-based back produces model of pages used in Lebanon blast. So they are denying that it was them. They're saying that this company in Budapest, they have a license to use Gold Apollo logos, Gold Apollo items, and develop them and produce them and sell them. And we had this report in Reuters earlier on that said the model of pages used in detonations in Lebanon were made in Budapest-based back consulting Taiwanese pager firm Gold Apollo said on Wednesday, adding it had only licensed out its brand to the company and was not involved in the production of the devices. This is the key thing here. Gold Apollo authorized BAC to use our brand trademark for product sales in specific regions, but the design and manufacturing of the products is entirely handled by BAC. BAC, this company, we heard reports that it's a one-man company based in Budapest, suspicious company, and that they were the ones who supplied this. But now we have to look into what the walkie-talkies today. Clearly, there has been a breach when it comes to Hezbollah, but when it comes to the actual items, they were not made by this company according to this person. Reports said that Israel planted explosive devices, then had a certain software that heated the batteries that caused the devices to detonate. There are a lot of theories out there. But this company, Gold Apollo, they denied any involvement in what happened. They said it's not us, it's that other company. And we had other reports coming online that they were thinking of suing Israel for doing this, because you're talking about a massive case here, you know, people being killed. You're talking about a case of mass terror against civilians with mass-produced items that are sold to the public. So even if you want to say that, for example, Hezbollah received a batch or whatever, anyone can use them. So even if members of Hezbollah, and by the way, there is no justification for detonating them with members of Hezbollah, by the way, because you don't know where they can be used. You have Geneva Conventions banning the use of mass-produced products as weapons. But again, you know, what does all of it mean? You know, Geneva Conventions, the United Nations, they might as well dismantle themselves and just say it outright. It's all a joke. You know, the UN doesn't do anything. No Geneva Convention, nothing. It's all nothing. Nothing is happening. There are no implications. This state of terror can conduct its activities with full US backing to the highest levels. Whatever crimes against no matter who, they don't care. These people are used to having this impunity and conduct mass-scale terror against innocent civilians. And of course, we have the proof in Gaza, but now we're having more proof in Lebanon. This was the second thing that I wanted to talk to you about. And in Israel, they're celebrating in synagogues. They were celebrating yesterday in Israel in synagogues the mass explosions against the civilians in Lebanon. Okay, let me share this couple of clips with you to show you exactly what's happening here. So they're celebrating, these people in synagogues in Israel, celebrating this mass attack on civilian population where children were killed. Children were killed in this attack. What is the United States saying, ladies and gentlemen? What is the United States saying? We have no information. Of course, they don't have any information. They don't, bless them, the American administration. They don't have information about anything. Oh, we don't know. We're not sure. You're not sure. They were probably the ones who authorized this whole thing. They act as if it's Israel doing everything. Some reports said that Israel notified the U.S. administration that they were about to do something in Lebanon. What do you mean? Told them you were with them. The top figures in the military in the U.S. They were coordinating with Gallant, the defense minister, and everyone in Israel what they're going to do with Lebanon. They brought their aircraft carriers to the region to supposedly deter Hezbollah and Iran, right? And they're continuing, but they're acting like, oh no, we don't have any idea what's happening. We have no clue. And, call for calm. And international news, like international mainstream media, again, no condemnation, just an attack in Lebanon. No recklessness, no mass terror, no threat to innocent civilians, no nothing. And what's surprising as well, you have some Arab governments participating in this festival of abhorrence and depravity, right? Mocking the people of Lebanon. How can you do that? Mocking the people facing a mass-scale terror attack. Okay. What did we have as a response from Hezbollah? Well, mainly everyone is anticipating the speech of the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Nasrallah, tomorrow at 5 in the afternoon. That's in Lebanon time. We'll hopefully be covering that. But before Nasrallah, we had a couple of statements coming out today from several top figures at Hezbollah. The most relevant one was the head of Hezbollah's executive council, Hashim Safiyuddin. He attended a funeral. With some of the martyrs in Lebanon, and he made a couple of statements. Okay. Here we are. He made a couple of statements during the funeral of the aggression on Beirut, and he said a couple of things. Firstly, he said, when there is patience, God gives the believers the best reward in the world and in the hereafter. And this is our culture, our resistance, and the history of these noble and honorable families. And by the way, with the son of a political figure in Hezbollah, a member of parliament called Ali Ammar, was also killed in this attack. So far you've had many children of senior figures in Hezbollah being martyred in this barbaric attack and other barbaric attacks that Israel carries out in Lebanon. So to those people who say, it's all a show, because you still have people saying, oh, it's all a show. Well, these people, they're children. Well, what's more precious to you than your child in this life? And when they lose them, they show only patience and, thank God, and we're on this path and we have to sacrifice. And they continue that. We will continue in the path of struggle until liberation and until we pray in Jerusalem. This is what they say. He added, the enemy does not know to this day what a resistant society is, which was raised on the sacrifices of Karbala and the sacrifices of the master of martyrs, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, who, when his right hand was cut off, he carried the sword in his left, and when his left was cut off, he continued until the end of the road. If your goal is to stop the battle, you then know that the people of Gaza have more determination, resolve, and will to move forward. Netanyahu knows that this path to pass his deceptions and lies does not return the settlers to the north, because this will increase their numbers many more. Okay, this is one of the first indications that they will be putting new areas in the circle. They'll be putting new areas in the circle. So if he's saying many more will become a base, then you're talking about larger locations that Hezbollah will be targeting. So far, they've been targeting these locations mostly in the Galilee regions, but they will increase it now. Okay. He also added that, let the resistance people and all lovers rest assured that the resistance is strong, dear, great, and capable of remaining steadfast and capable of inflicting defeats on the enemy. The resistance is strong and present and has not been affected at all in terms of performance, and enemy targets were bombed this morning. This morning, as a matter of fact, we've had attacks on Israel. Many fires broke out in areas of the Galilee, and there were reports of certain factories being hit as well. But we haven't seen anything out of the ordinary. When it comes to the attacks. And Hezbollah already said that you're talking about two different paths. The first path is the path of having this support as a front for Gaza. And the second path is what? Is the revenge. Well, not the revenge, the payback. Call it whatever you like, against this mass-scale terror when it comes to Israel. And he also added, and that's the main thing that we really wanted to get to, the Zionist aggression has its own punishment and retribution, and it will come, God willing, for we are the people and we will not be broken or defeated. This came from Hashem Safiyuddin. He's almost the second most senior figure in Hezbollah, but the most important speech is going to come tomorrow by the leader of Hezbollah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, who will be outlining what's going to come. And again, don't expect too many details, because Hezbollah, they do not specify too many details. We can only understand certain things from the hints that are coming from Hezbollah. So what can they do? I mean, this is the big question here. What can they do and what will happen after that? Well, they can do many things. Firstly, the level, and there are reports here, and this is something very important. We had one report that said that yesterday's attack shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened from an Israeli perspective. Why? Because it was intended for the beginning of the all-out war. Israel already had this power tool against the Lebanese, and they were about to use it when they declare an all-out war so that they can stun Hezbollah immediately and make them take a more defensive position. But two people from Hezbollah, according to that report, suspected that something was wrong. Israel was up on that. They knew what was about to happen, and they decided to make that decision and explode them all. That was one version. Second version that we have, including, based on things coming from Israel, by the way, Israel did this so that Hezbollah can take a step back and agree to have a certain settlement and reach a deal. However, both of these assumptions and ideas may not necessarily be true. Why? Because Israel hasn't really needed any reason to escalate. They've been constantly escalating. The path that Netanyahu chose, the path that Israel has taken and has been taking ever since the beginning of this genocide, is escalation after escalation. Why do I say that? Because we had certain periods where things toned down slightly. For example, approximately 4 months ago, I called it a semi-ceasefire at the time. We had a slight de-escalation. Israel started to provide more aid for the Gazan population. They started to allow more people to go back to the north. They started to release some of the prisoners. In what appeared to be a certain understanding behind closed doors between them and the Palestinian resistance led by Hamas. At one point, Israel only had policing forces in Gaza. They withdrew all of their divisions and only kept policing forces that are mostly non-combatant to stay in certain strategic locations for Israel in Gaza, that they are occupying inside of Gaza. Yet, despite that, and during the negotiations, and during periods where things seemed hopeful to reach a ceasefire, Benjamin Netanyahu decided to take certain actions to flip things around. So we can't say that Israel does these things out of provocation. That's not the case. They're unprovoked. That's unprovoked. You're already in a war. We know that. But things are toning down. You have negotiations. You have delegations agreeing to ceasefire. And you're going and escalate. Secondly, the delegations and the ceasefire talks. We had 3 periods, 3 different times, where all of the negotiating delegation unanimously, apart from Benjamin Netanyahu, agreed to a ceasefire. What does Netanyahu do? Puts a stick in the wheel. And that stick, by the way, when we talk about a stick in the wheel, when it comes to Netanyahu, we talk about massacres. At one point, he said, we killed MahmoodOD only to justify conducting a horrible massacre against the people in Khan Yunis. He did that most. We had Hamas agreeing to a ceasefire. Well, if Hamas already agreed to a ceasefire, and you did not agree to a ceasefire, and you went on to escalate even further, isn't that clear to everyone by now? Shouldn't it be clear to everyone that Benjamin Netanyahu does not want anything but escalation after escalation? Then there's another thing. This escalation came when Netanyahu was having these talks with Gideon Saar, an ex-Likud party member, who had talks with Netanyahu with regards to potentially replacing Yoav Gallant as the defense minister. Yoav Gallant, who showed certain leniency in recent months at certain points when it comes to having a deal with Hezbollah, and said that no, we can reach a diplomatic deal and we don't need to necessarily escalate militarily. Could these talks, or could a potential failure of these talks have led Netanyahu to do what he did? Because don't forget, you're talking about a man who is politically driven and politically motivated, and who is a psychopath. Benjamin Netanyahu is a narcissistic psychopath. He doesn't care about anyone. He doesn't, hell, now the top figures don't care about the Israeli prisoners in Gaza. When you have the chief of staff coming the other day saying that we might not return anyone, what does that mean? Well, I've given up on them. Say you've given up on them then, and that your only aim is to increase tensions in the region. All of this should never be detached from what the United States is doing. All of this scene, politically and geopolitically, in that region is directly linked to the United States and its position as the main global power. And we are in a period where we are being transitioned from an era of a unipolar world to a multipolar world. What Israel is doing, with the blessings of the United States, with the blessings and 100% approval from the United States, is not detached whatsoever from the United States. Look at what the United States is doing to Russia. Look at the increased attacks. They're going deeper and deeper. We had reports that they attacked a facility that might contain small tactical nuclear weapons. and the Russians had to tell all of the people to evacuate from that region. They're attacking next to Moscow now. Why? Because the United States wants to have a last stamp. I'm not leaving the position of the global superpower. I will not be sharing this world with anyone else. You're welcome to be in this world so long as you submit to my will, politically, economically, whatever we say. But to share the decision making, no, thank you very much. All of that is directly linked to the United States. And don't buy any of the theater and circus that they're selling you, that they're trying to apply pressure on Israel to decrease and to contain and to have a ceasefire and all of this hopefulness talk. And now today Blinken came in. What did Blinken say? We agreed on 15 out of the 18 main points when it comes to the ceasefire. And when it comes to Blinken, I actually want to share something very interesting with you. People are actually getting sick and tired of Blinken in Europe. And there was a Polish member of the European Parliament who came up with a very interesting speech when it comes to Blinken. Let me share that with you quickly. Go.
Go home as soon as possible. Get lost. Get lost. We don't want Blinken. Go home. Go home as soon as possible. Get lost. Get lost. We don't want you here. We don't want Polish people paying and dying for your wars. Thank you very much.
This is a Polish member of the European Parliament. So it's not only in the Middle East people are sick from Blinken, but in Europe as well. Well done to this Polish member of European Parliament for saying it as it is to Antony Blinken. And why are these people saying that? By the way, this is what people need to understand. Why are they saying that? It's because they know what they're up to in Europe. They're dragging all of Europe to this war that they don't need, and it's not for them, and it's not on their behalf, and it's not there to protect them. They've been only using NATO as their expansionist project for global hegemony and a tool to take down Russia as a country, not to protect the Ukrainian people, not to do anything. Otherwise, if you genuinely cared about the Ukrainian people, there was a peace process going between Putin and Ukraine. We almost had a ceasefire. Hungary reportedly mediated alongside other countries. The only difference was that the Ukrainian government or figures in the Ukrainian government were talking about long-term ceasefire, whereas Putin was talking about an all-out peace where they settle everything down. And then you had this invasion, these invasions in Russia, and this recent massive escalation. So all of what's happening is not detached from the United States. The US is knowing and is realizing that the collapse of this empire that controls the whole world and treats people as economic tools, as you're less valuable than money to them in many cases, to the administration. And they're realizing that this is changing. They're realizing that the global institutions that they created post-World War II are being ridiculed now. I mean, we've had a genocide and an infanticide for a year now the so-called international community and the United Nations and the ICJ and haven't been able to do anything. Now we have the UN General Assembly voting, majority vote, that Israel must dismantle its settlements within 12 months. Okay. And so long as the American billions are going, who cares? Boo-hoo, continue talking. There is no implementation, there is no enforcement. So it's becoming a joke. And again, if we generally and genuinely had international law, well, things would have been great. If things were implemented equally on everyone, oh, excellent. Everyone receives equal rights, but that's not happening. And we're looking towards a bigger escalation, undoubtedly a much bigger escalation. The Lebanese resistance, they have no option but to respond. And Israel is so stupid, by the way, they made more people support Hezbollah now. Because don't forget, Hezbollah, they didn't have all of the Lebanese supporting them. We have some of these Lebanese people, like some of these Arab states, right? Some of these Arab states and Arab governments, taking the position that supports Zionists. All they need to do is just declare that they're Zionists, right? Oh no, and not us, and we don't care, and what are we to do with the people of Gaza? Don't you realize, you imbecile, that that's coming on you if you don't care about the people of Gaza? Don't any of you realize that? To them, people think if they legitimize such atrocities against civilians, that you're legitimizing the act itself, and one day it can come against you by someone with more power. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with these people? But now they made more people in Lebanon support Hezbollah, to a level where we're having more people demanding Hezbollah to attack. People in Lebanon are demanding now, use your heavy missiles, they're telling Hezbollah. Look at how stupid. If you wanted the people to be against them, why would you do that? Why would you do that on a mass scale like that? What's wrong with you? And then you have more people, any commentator really, any people, viewers, commenting, observers. Why doesn't the resistance attack their citizens if they are committing these genocides against their own citizens? But then another argument comes here, well, they don't have citizens because all of them are armed, isn't it? And most of them have to go to the army, bar a few, of course, with an exemption. So you're talking about a militarized society that is a nation of an army, right? An army made out of a whole nation. That's the concept, right? So again, Israel, time after time, is taking every single step to harm itself even further. Deterrence, come on, who are you going to deter? They're talking about deterrence now. We want to return the deterrence that we had with Hezbollah. Did anything ever deter these people? A genocide is not deterring the Gazans from resisting you and from the people supporting their legitimate resistance. Hezbollah, you killed their top figures, you killed their sons, their children, their families, you massacred them. Did that stop? No, it didn't stop. It continued. Why? Because there's still a reason. What's that reason? Illegal occupation, inequality, supremacy, racism, and continued massacres and terror. The enforcement of your ideology through violence, verbal and non-verbal and physical and mass-scale terror on other people. But Israel refuses constantly to look in the mirror, look at the past, fix the problems that will not all of a sudden disappear, no matter how much they want to coat it with deals with new Arab states and what have you, and having these peace treaties that are nothing but ink on paper. And they are continuing to escalate, one escalation after one escalation. This is what I wanted to share with you. And let me open the space up for all of your participation. Thanks again for joining me for another live stream. Let's have a look where we are. There's a long chat to go to now. Okay, let's start from the bottom, see where we are from the bottom. Hassan is saying only the Houthis understand the enemy, Iran and the rest of the Axis don't fully comprehend them. They don't understand eye for an eye. Well, each one of them have their own strategy in dealing with them. But what we haven't seen is an eye for an eye. We haven't seen that. There is no comparison between this mass scale hyper terror that Israel is conducting in Gaza and in Lebanon and across the region ever since its existence, in comparison to what the occupied, the oppressed do legitimately to try to attempt to get their rights, well, because asking for their rights did not work. That's what's happening. But again, Israel is increasing this argument now. People saying, well, what are you waiting for? They're killing everyone left, right, and center, killing children now in Lebanon, expanding their genocide. What are you doing exactly? And again, instead of them having this review and looking in the mirror and fixing historical and contemporary matters that are crucial to solve the Palestinian cause. And Stephen Burrows, thank you so much for your super, much appreciated. Let's see where we are. And if anyone has any questions for me, by the way, if you wouldn't mind highlighting them just so that I am able to see them properly, and otherwise we'll get lost. Tori is saying, have you heard any news on Ansarullah troops have made it to Syria or Iraq? Help is on the way. Well, one thing we heard is that this report wasn't accurate, by the way, and thank you for bringing that up, because I had to clarify that, because I mentioned that report that later, well, at least some people claimed that it wasn't accurate. One of them is a journalist from Lebanon who spoke with Sputnik, the news agency that the report was attributed to, who said we didn't have any report as such, and it might be propaganda. Now, does that mean there is no presence? No, not necessarily. Why? Because they have access. And if they want to go to Syria and Lebanon, they can, without a problem. And that's assuming they want to have a ground attack or an attack being operated from Syria against Israel. But the most likely scenario is them potentially participating from Lebanon. Kate, Hez will speak tomorrow. Will Hez go all out? Well, I don't think Israel left any option, really. I mean, I think Israel is the one going all out. It's not anyone else. Listen, again, let me repeat that. Let me be clear here. And let me quote these people who fight Israel. Let's take Hamas, for example, the leading movement fighting Israel. These people claimed multiple times, not just once, that we would rather get our rights without fighting and without violence. But Israel proved time after time that it does not give us our rights by us simply asking. And guess what? They have a lot of evidence to support that. Do you know what the biggest support for that argument? The West Bank Authority led by Abu Mazen. Why? Well, that authority has been negotiating. They have been conducting peaceful negotiations for the past 31 years with Israel without anything. Not without anything. With the opposite. With the expansion of the squatting establishment, with more occupation, with more brutality, with the denial of the existence of the Palestinian people as a whole. No, you're not Palestinian. There is no such thing as a Palestinian, they'll tell you. Some of their pseudo-historians, like their pseudo-history and their pseudo-existence, they tell you, oh no, there's no Palestinian people. They fake up these arguments like they fake their existence. So from Hamas' perspective, and Even Hezbollah, if you're talking about Hezbollah, why were these people fighting? Well, Israel occupied their lands. Not just occupied their lands and brutally murdered them. Put their military boots on them. Like, what are they expecting? So it's Israel going all out, Israel escalating, Israel occupying, Israel committing a genocide, Israel committing mass-scale terror supported by the United States and many, or not many, but some other countries too. Now, with regards to the response, I do not think, based on my reading of Hezbollah's pattern of behavior and actions being conducted since their entry into Al-Aqsa flood, and them labeling it as a support front, not a war participant, and there's a big gap, big difference between the two. I don't think they will be taking decisions that are not very thoroughly calculated. Saying that, Israel left them with no option but to have something massive against Israel. Why? Because one of their rules is escalation will be met with escalation, civilians will be met with civilians, civilian buildings will be met with civilian buildings. Now, Israel came up with this attack that is very specific in terms of implementation, mass scale, pretending that it's only against Hezbollah, but it's not. And people are dying, and massive injuries and catastrophes and panic. From Hezbollah's perspective, they are calculating it this way. Yesterday, 3,000. Today, 450 wounded. Yesterday, 11 or 12. Today, 14 killed. From Hezbollah's perspective, you have approximately 30 civilians killed who are not operating in combat with Israel, and over 3,500 wounded. Hezbollah, in my opinion, and based on my reading and some of their statements, will be looking to inflict at least the same numbers on Israel. This is what I think. Zach, do you personally believe that these terrorist attacks were triggered earlier than intended to destroy evidence? Well, I think these terrorist attacks, these mass-scale terror attacks that Israel conducted in Lebanon, firstly, they are not something abnormal to a genocidal occupying entity. They thrived on terror. They established themselves on terror and mass expulsion. So there's nothing strange here. We were about to see them. Was this the time that they actually intended for them to happen? I don't know that, and I can't say that. But again, I can state some reports that said, well, they didn't really intended to do that. And Hezbollah, some of their fighters found out that there's a problem with them. Again, that's if that's true. However, putting these rumors aside, let's talk facts. What are the facts? Benjamin Netanyahu approved an increase in the escalation in Lebanon just a couple of days ago. He also ordered the IDF to start increasing the scale of actions, the scale of violence against Lebanon. What did we have? All of a sudden, we had this. So it's coming in line with what? With what the Israeli prime minister is saying. So you have a genocidal maniac here, mass murdering Palestinians, still in power. No one is sending their armies to take him down. No one. And now he's ordering another genocide against the Lebanese people. So he's saying it, and he's implementing it. So after his statement, what did we see? We saw an addition of the desired objectives of the war that only included things related to Gaza. Now they said one of the objectives of the war is to return the Israelis who were evacuated from their homes due to Hezbollah's attacks. We had that. Secondly, we had another whole division going from Gaza to the north. We had confirmations from all of the top figures in Israel that we're looking towards an escalation in Lebanon. We had 2 consecutive mass terror attacks in Lebanon, and we are expecting more. So all of them are coming in line with what Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, and the man in power is actually saying that he is about to do, again, almost with full impunity. And Maria A. and all others, thank you so much for your wonderful comments and contribution. Let's see what else we have. Marvin is asking a very relevant question. Explain Hezbollah in Lebanon. I'm assuming Hezbollah is like Hamas, has provided social services, hospitals, infrastructure, utilities. So all the pager victims were essential civil workers. That is very on point indeed. These people have charitable organizations that provide shelter and basic necessities for poor people and the people who are most needed in the community, including shelters. They have hospitals. Hezbollah in Lebanon, they have an organization called I think Al-Jam'iyya Al-Hay'a Al-Sihhiyya Al-Islamiyya, the Islamic Health Association. Ambulances, hospitals, everything. And that deals with civilians, and you're talking about hospitals. Then they have other utilities and infrastructure too, because they are the Lebanese people. And the thing that the West is trying to portray in people's minds here is that they're terrorists. A small fraction of elite genocidal ex-colonies with a vast history of grave genocides and enslavement of other people and racism and depravity. You still go and read history and their history, going to tell you that these people are terrorists. Merely 34, 35 countries, northwestern countries mostly, right? And they want the whole world to believe. The whole world doesn't view these people as such. And no matter what they do to try and brainwash people, we'll never view them as such. These people are Lebanese people at the end of the day. They have their own political path. And as a matter of fact, they struggled and sacrificed to the most to give Lebanon independence. Without them, there's no independence, by the way, for Lebanon. You wouldn't say Lebanese. You would have seen Israelis settling in Beirut. Likewise with Hamas. How did Israel get expelled from Gaza? By force. How did Israel get expelled off Sinai? By force. This is the logic here. So they do, and civilian and essential civil workers and the pager victims and walkie-talkie and whatever, most of them would have been with people who are working in essential services. That's why you're calling it a mass-scale terror attack against civilians. There is no justification, but these people running Israel and the people supporting it, they want to make it appear as if, no, that's legitimate. We can do that to everyone. Well, are we surprised? Of course we're not surprised, you know? Infants in Gaza are Hamas, and everyone in Gaza are Hamas. And again, you know, using the same Hamas scapegoat thing. And they, today or yesterday, the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza, they released the names of the Palestinian martyrs. 14 pages were under one. Names of infants under one. A third children under 18. That's an infanticide. That's not just a genocide. And not many people are saying that. That's the mass homicide of infants. A country committing that. Backed by the US and many Western countries and Western governments. And some Arab states as well. What is that? So it's not surprising to them. What's surprising is there is not more uproar globally and outrage about this mass-scale barbarism that this state has been conducting ever since its existence, but now is just highlighting it even further. So what, are we going to wait for something bigger now? What are we going to wait for? For them to drop a nuclear bomb? Well, they already said they intended to nuke Gaza, or they thought about nuking Gaza. What, do you want to wait for that? What is it you're waiting for? Nuclear bombs? Okay, wait. Wait and see what's coming on you. That's the things people think. If you think it's detached from you, right? These people, they have no value for human life. They have no value for human life. Pat and Lou saying, are they still managing to sell land for new settlements? Are people still willing to go there? Where is the settlement establishment based from, by the way, and supported from financially? America, the United States of America. All the charities, all the funding, the people, the thugs that they bring from the United States or previously incarcerated and what have you. They bring them, they raise a beard and have, these things and wear a kippah and act like they are Jewish. And they start stealing people's lands. Like this Jacob said, who was in Sheikh Jarrah, if I'm not going to steal it, someone else is going to steal it. They know they're thieves. So this operation is run from the United States, not just from Israel. Don't think that it's, just Israel. But you will still have people. Why? Because they have lower prices, they have perks that they get from the government, and they are met with they have impunity. They enjoy Israeli law. Well, I don't know if you can call it enjoy, but they are under technically Israeli law, implementing martial law and a state of terror on the indigenous Palestinian society. That's living on its lands, that are living on their lands, on their ancestors' lands, who are embedded. And you have these foreigners coming, the squatting establishment, backed by state, paid to go, and maybe you'll serve in the army for a bit. And then they go and they steal and they commit all of these crimes against the Palestinian people. But in the grand scheme of things, Israel is in problems. It's in big trouble because many people fled. Many people fled the country. The situation is not really, is not that great. Marine is saying, who will fund the rebuilding of the Gaza Strip? Well, many countries said, and thank you again for your super thank you. Many countries said that they will be happy to fund. But it's interesting that you said that, because let me try and see if I can find this video to share with you. There was a press conference where one of the American officials was asked about rebuilding Gaza. I forgot his name. And no, I can't find the video. Anyway, one of the reporters was asking the US official, well, who will pay for rebuilding Gaza? Because they were talking about, I think, Ukraine and Russia having to pay for the damage in Ukraine. And he was asked, well, is Israel going to pay for Gaza? And then he answered, well, we have many countries that are willing to support. And so I'd avoid that question. Wow, they could just avoid a question. Simple. I don't have to answer. Israel won't pay a penny for Gaza, but you will have, of course, many countries contributing. Many Arab states, they will have donations as well. But again, let's get this over and done with. It's not like we're seeing an end to to this war. We've been talking about this war for a year now. And every time you think that there is something, some maybe ray of hope of a potential de-escalation, Israel goes and eliminates it. Netanyahu will escalate with another crime and massacre more people. So it's not looking like it's ending, even with this escalation in Lebanon, by the way, because listen, you can say that the escalation in Lebanon is probably the ladder to climb down and then reach an all-out settlement by saying, we have to move our forces and this and that and kind of end it with Gaza somehow. But even again with that, we haven't seen any genuine signs of any Israeli will to leave. At least from when it comes to Netanyahu. Again, that's the thing. It's not as if he's representing the majority of Israelis with this. He is representing a large chunk of the Israeli society, undoubtedly. But when it comes to the day-to-day management of the war and his outlook and how he's viewing the actual war, most of the war cabinet was against him. The negotiating delegation was against him. But he's continuing down the same path. And Shirley, thank you so much for your super, much appreciated. And thanks everyone else for your participation too. And also Alan Marwin, thank you so much. He said, where is Alan's message? Yeah, thank you so much for your super. That's Gabriel, sorry, I've got the wrong one. We'll get to Gabriel hopefully in a sec. Alan says, thank you, Mohammed, for providing vital analysis, equal rights for all free Palestine. Thank you so much, my friend. Exactly, this is what we're calling for, equal rights. Is it that difficult? Is it that difficult to get equal rights for everyone? No, it's not that difficult, but some people want to portray it as if something difficult and impossible. Why? To keep the regime of supremacy, to keep Jewish supremacy alive, to keep Zionism alive, to keep the occupation alive, and to continue the conflict. Why? Because they are benefiting from the conflict. You know, we're sitting here talking and hoping and end the war and end in this, and some people are making money off the war. Where did the 20 billion, to whose pockets did the 20 billion go to that the United States sent to Israel? That money mostly doesn't leave the US. Goes written from the taxpayers' money, state theft, as foreign aid, with the condition of purchasing from military industrial complex companies that are in America. So they steal the money from hard-earning taxpayers and they send it to the military industrial complex to continue the war machine. So some people are enjoying it now. Some people are loving it. This is what you need to realize. Some people are loving this war and want it to continue as much as possible forever. Because, you know, they're profiteering of it. Well, Kate saying, Mahmoud, anything news? Arab nations, this massive attack in Lebanon? Officially, we didn't hear, Egypt condemned the attack. I heard Egypt in a press conference, the Egyptian foreign minister was with Blinken. He said, we unequivocally condemn this attack on Lebanon. And I think a couple of other states did, but not enough, not to the desired level. And again, because these people have their differences with Hezbollah, they will be blinded by everything. And how ironic, Arab and Muslim states will be side by side with Israel when it comes to Iran and when it comes to Hezbollah. Some of them were joking. Some newspapers in the Arab world were releasing like caricatures of Hezbollah mocking them, mocking the people. What are you doing? Was it? And but of course, you know, many of the Arab people are standing with the people of Lebanon, because again, you're talking about devastating acts of barbarism against the Lebanese civilians. But from the Arab governments, you're talking about governments who were sitting there watching a genocide. What are we talking about? We're expecting them to start being loud about, you know, a couple of thousand people's having pages detonating with them. They didn't raise an eyebrow when over 40,000 were butchered. What? And mass destruction. What are they going to do with Lebanon? And it's a very shameful state, a very shameful state of affairs. Vivette, Mahmoud very sad and angry about the scenes from Gaza and Beirut. Do you think Israel did this to push Hezbollah to escalate, or was it an act of desperation? I mean, undeniably, Netanyahu wants to escalate. All of his actions are escalation after escalation after escalation. He's enabled by the United States and the EU primarily, in many countries at least, many European governments, but primarily the United States. Like the United States is the country that supports Israel and enables it and allows it and even pushes it to do certain things and acting like it doesn't. Because don't forget that there's a big theater going on, acting, But no, it's part of Netanyahu's plan. Netanyahu's plan is to escalate, but again, certain escalations cannot be ignored. And Hezbollah will be retaliating to this attack with something that we haven't seen so far in the past year. And thank you so much, everyone, joining in and tuning in with your insights. And of course, apologies that I won't be able to reach all of them, but we'll take a few more questions. Trahek is saying Hamas is having a meeting in Cairo with other resistance factions on Monday discussing their joint role in Gaza Strip after the genocidal war is done over. What's your thoughts on that? Well, that's not something irregular or abnormal. I mean, the Palestinian resistance regularly meets in Cairo. Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other movements, they meet in Cairo regularly to discuss what's going to happen the day after. We've had that happening many times previously, so it's not surprising. As a matter of fact, Cairo is showing more support of the position of Hamas. And by the way, if Israel is disappointed, at least from one country, that would be Egypt. Because firstly, they didn't allow them to expel the population. So they hindered their plans heavily. And now they are taking this strong position when it comes to Hamas with regards to the Philadelphia corridor. And again, don't take it as defending the government, please. Some people start thinking, oh, you're defending the government. No, I'm not defending anyone. I'm telling you things as they are. Cairo definitely didn't do enough. All of the Arab governments are disappointing. As a matter of fact, this genocide wouldn't have happened if we had genuinely powerful Arab states and people in power who represent the will of the people. And Egypt is an example, by the way. Why? Because when we had a democratically elected president in the form of Mohammed Morsi, Israel escalated with Gaza. Do you know how long that lasted? 11 days. And not 0.1% from the destruction that we have now. Why? Because Egypt showed a very strong supporting position with the Palestinian people, and they sent their prime minister to Gaza at the time. His name was Hisham Khandil, sending a message to who? To Israel. Oh, be warned, be careful. But when you don't have governments that represent the people, and most of the Arab and Muslim people support the Palestinian cause, you have this. You enable this catastrophe. But now they are showing a position almost in line with Hamas when it comes to the Philadelphia corridor. Because to them, that's a red line. Israel cannot be there on the Philadelphia corridor. They know that they will be coming after them. As a matter of fact, they were coming after them anyway. They were planning to expel the Palestinian people to Sinai and then having an escalation with Sinai. And then they'll tell you, oh, we need to occupy a security line in Sinai. Why? Because some terrorists are attacking us. And then they'll occupy the whole Sinai again, because they have their plans with Sinai. One of the ministers in the government was calling to reoccupy them. Now many people in Israel are saying, all of this is ours, greater Israel. So it's nothing abnormal. It's very normal for Hamas and the other movements to meet in Cairo, because don't forget, they're a part of the deal now. They are the main representatives of the Palestinian people in Gaza. We talk about Hamas, don't forget, a democratically elected government. But, when democracy comes with someone that the West doesn't like, then, doesn't work. Democracy, so long as it's on our terms. Not genuine democracy, will to the people. No. Democracy on American terms. Democracy on Israeli, on Zionist terms. Our economic terms, our political terms. But apart from that, no democracy. Democracy can go to hell. And human rights. Dennis, thank you so much. I'm glad to hear that, my friend. Thank you so much for your contribution, for your kind comments. Okay. Okay. Kate, Mahmoud, prediction. What's next? What can we expect from Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis? Well, of course, I'm no future reader. But my prediction is based on what I read and what I've seen so far. What I have read and what I've seen so far, and I have been spending, if you want to calculate them, they're probably months, right? Not hours or days or weeks. I am seeing a continuation of this situation up until Israel as it exists today ceases to exist. Now, that's not saying that this will happen tomorrow, or even a month or a year or two, although it could. But the way Israel is behaving is very, very, very different to how Israel was behaving before. And I will give you one example. One main example is that Israel previously used to value the life of Israelis. I can tell you that. Of course, you can criticize, and it's a militant state and cannon fodder and all of that argument. Okay. But before, when Israelis were kidnapped or when Israelis were in prisoners of war, it was a big deal. Like one of the missing Israelis, I think it was from the 80s, who was also, he disappeared in Lebanon. Some people blamed Hezbollah, some people blamed Iran or the Amal movement. His name is Ron Arad. He was a pilot. People were talking about him in Israel decades later. So they used to have some sort of value to the Israeli life. Again, not ignoring the argument that it's a state that indoctrinates its people based on hate, and it's a racist killing machine that kills its own people too. But they had this care before. They previously had prisoner swaps in the 80s with the Palestinian Liberation, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the Ahmad Jibril group. Thousands of Palestinians were released for a small number of Israeli troops. Gilad Shalit won to release one Israeli prisoner. They released 1,000 and approximately 49 Palestinian prisoners. Now you have 280 Israelis, dozens of which from the top division in the Israeli army, the Gaza division, and some of them civilians. And what does Israel do? Israel starts to kill them. What does that mean? That Israel of now is not the Israel of before when it comes to the lives of the people in Israel. They don't care. They're in a careless mode. So that means, well, if you stop caring about the lives of your people that you claim to be defending, then what's left? The land? The state? What's left? Israel has always been selling the lie that it's the safe haven for Jewish people, that it's there to protect the Jewish people, capitalizing and weaponizing the victimhood and putting it on steroids to justify its existence, first and foremost for the Jewish people. What happened to that? Well, now the Israelis are saying what's happening. It is the death machine of the Jewish people. Israel is the killing machine of the Jewish people. It's not the safe haven for the Jewish people. And it's all a lie. It's all a big lie, a neo-colonialist project that eats up its own people as cannon fodder for the sake of bigger projects. So this pattern of behavior now, you cannot eradicate that in a year or two, in a week or two. This has been happening for a year now, this genocide. And more during that time. Of course, the first thing in our minds and thoughts is the grave suffering of the people of Gaza, and we pray that it's lifted very soon. But Israelis have been dying in Gaza with the Palestinians by Israel, by their state, by the country that's supposed to protect them. 50 were killed by Israel in the first month. Israelis who were released from Gaza or who were freed in previous deals claimed time after time that Israel targeted them. Many times, Noa Argamani said, that they collapsed a building on her, the IDF, and criticized the Israeli media when they tried to put the blame on Hamas for hitting her, saying, I will not fall victim to the media. I had bruises on all of my body because of an Israeli strike on the place I was in. So the first one, Yocheved Lifshitz, and the last one said that they were targeted many times by Israel. What does that tell you? That they were killing them. They were seeking to kill every Israeli. Like they killed Israelis on the 7th of October. Like they massacred the people in the Nova Festival with the helicopter images being released from back in October. Like the tanks that were in Kibbutz Be'eri and the other kibbutzes shooting at Israeli homes, where they suspected there were Hamas fighters, but also certainly knew there were Israelis. And anyone in Israel who is blessed with the capacity to look beyond the censorship and the brainwashing machine that's controlling their minds knows that very well. So they are escalating, and they are escalating, and they are escalating, and they're in a different mode. And that's not looking like it's ending. Up until the dismantling of Israel as an apartheid, supremacist, occupying entity. It can turn to something else. I mean, the thing that we hope is that, we turn and we manage to work out something where it will become a state with equal rights. But the way it's going, no. See, that's the thing. They want full control with supremacy and apartheid and military rule and ethnic cleansing and killing. But the people who they're fighting will never give up. They've never given up. And they were in weaker positions before, by the way, and they didn't give up. And now the whole region is changing. So it's only looking like it's escalating. If something happens, by the way, and Netanyahu is taken down, we might see a short period of relative quiet that will undoubtedly restart again. That will undoubtedly, end at some point, unless a total solution is reached. But there is almost a consensus amongst the political level in Israel that they do not want a Palestinian state next to them. Meaning, they only want a big ethno-state, a big apartheid state. That the Palestinian people will not put up with. The sooner the decision makers in Israel realize that, the merrier. And if they were genuine about the future of the Israeli people, that they would look towards having a solution that will take away every reason for resisting the state of Israel. That's the wise thing to do. You want to defeat Hamas? Strip all of the causes that Hamas is fighting for. What does that leave them with? Nothing. But they're not doing that. They're not doing that. And that means that, unfortunately, and it's a very unfortunate state of affairs, that we are looking at more wars and more blood, and potentially even far more than what we've seen so far. And thank you, Kate, for that. Okay, let's take a final one. Siraj, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone else who sent super. Sorry if I missed you, by the way. And Incognito, thank you so much for that as well. Much appreciated. Makhev saying, Salam Mahmoud, what do Palestinians have to return to? They have declared the schools, hospitals, and the universities. They targeted kids and women. Can Gaza and the West Bank remain inhabitable? Oh, yes. Look, destruction. Buildings will be rebuilt. The declared number, the officially declared number, and I know that mostly it's higher, 42,000 people were killed. Well, during that period, 65,000 people were born in Gaza. During the genocide. Of course, massive suffering, but you won't hear many human rights organizations talking about it. Or the champions of women's rights, right, in Western enlightened democracies talking about that. No, they won't. But the things will be rebuilt so long as there are people with a will to live. So that's not an issue. Kate, Mahmoud, if there is no retaliation from Iran, Hezbollah after this attack in Lebanon, 200,000 Palestinians killed. I have I don't believe that we have 200,000 Palestinians killed. These numbers, you're talking about people calculating certain things that will be there in total if this continues, and from diseases and what have you, and problems. But so far, you follow the health ministry. What the health ministry said, they have no interest in downplaying the number of killed people, fatalities in Gaza, of approximately 42,000. If you want to add the approximately 10,000, okay, 50,000 or 52,000, but not 200,000. We hope we don't reach that number as well. So I don't think it's accurate to say that. But you're saying if there is no retaliation, don't believe anything Nasrallah said or will say tomorrow. Do you concur? No, I don't concur. The other resistance fronts are the only fronts who had the guts to stand up and fight this genocidal entity and fight the whole backers of this genocidal entity and pay the price, a heavy price, by the way. Who's anyone to tell them how to operate and how not to operate? Yemen, they've gone out of starvation and war inflicted on them from the Saudi government, backed by the West, and yet they're taking this position to support the Palestinian people. Who am I or anyone else to tell them why have you stopped doing anything tomorrow? They're already doing everything in their capacity, right? But saying that, it's unexpected. It's not something that is very predictable, that we won't have anything. And again, when you talk about certain conflicts and battles, these things don't come and go in one instance, you know. Our period here on Earth is very short, if you want to consider like history and people before us and people after us. So that's why the human mind is usually focused on having everything in this. But you had previous situations that took you centuries to change, or decades. So they're seeing the points, they're seeing where they are in comparison to before, right? Many people after the 2006, for example, war with Lebanon, they said, look at Hezbollah, look at Lebanon, it's destroyed, it's this, it's that. And in Gaza at the same time, it got rebuilt and they continued, and their resistance got stronger than before. What does that tell you? They're winning by points. But I think after this mass-scale terror that Israel has been conducting in Lebanon for the past 2 days, well, the increase of it, I don't think this will be left without an answer. And we'll wrap it up there. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for another live stream. And apologies if I haven't reached all of your comments, but I appreciate all of your contribution and your wonderful support. Thank you so much for everyone who participated. Thanks for everyone who sent supers, much appreciated. And I'm sorry if I didn't mention you in the live chat, but I'll hopefully mention all of you now. Stephen Burrows, Padlin Loon, Marine, Shirley, Alan, Ray, Dennis, Siraj, the Incog, Siraj, and Cray. Again, thank you so much for your super chat, and thanks. And thanks to everyone else who participated in the chat. And again, sorry if I didn't reach all of your comments. I'll hopefully be with you with another live stream in the next coming days. Apart from that, we'll hopefully have videos. But it depends on the progress. If we see fit that we need to have a live stream with the videos, we'll do that. And stay blessed, everyone. Have a peaceful rest of the day or night, depending on where you are. And I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone.